is an ordinary autumn day in Bellevue, Washington, just east of Seattle. The day unfolds on schedule for 33-year-old Tanya Ryder.
Tanya actually had two jobs. One of them was at Fred Meyer in the health and beauty aid section as a stalker. That's an overnight shift.
She finishes her overnight shift at 9 o'clock that morning. From Bellevue, she will head down Highway 169 to her home in Maple Valley for a few hours of sleep. And later, she will return to Bellevue for her day job, overseeing the fitting room at a department store.
She was a dedicated worker. If she said she would be there 5 minutes early or 15 minutes early, she was there on the dime.
Tanya's husband, 39-year-old Tom Ryder, also works two jobs. By day, he clears land for new housing. By night, he delivers pizza.
We were working insane hours, but we had a goal in sight.
They're building their dream house, overlooking the tranquil Puget Sound.
Well, the idea behind all of this work and all of these hours was to make sure we had enough money to complete the house.
Well, they felt that if they put in a lot of hard work and a lot of long hours, that they could eventually slow down and enjoy the house and each other.
Tanya and Tom have been happily married for 7 years. Like many couples, their personalities are actually quite different.
Tom is very vocal, very jovial, very outspoken. He's a prankster, whereas Tanya is very quiet. She doesn't speak unless she has something to say, and Tom will just talk your ear off.
I'm an outgoing, boisterous idiot. Tanya's the other half of me. She's able to keep me in line.
If you have Tanya here, you have Tom there to balance her. This is a marriage made in heaven.
For now, Tom and Tanya Ryder are living in a house in Maple Valley. Their heavy-duty routine leaves them with little time to relax. They pass through the house at different times, and can easily go 3 or 4 days without seeing each other.
We had to schedule a time when our days off matched to actually even say hello. That's pretty crazy.
On Wednesday evening, Tom and Tanya enjoy a rare moment of togetherness.
She was home that night when I got home, so we actually got to talk a little bit and have a little, family time. I made her laugh, she made me laugh.
Later that night, Tanya works her overnight shift at the grocery store in Bellevue. At 9 a.m. on Thursday morning, Tanya leaves the store and starts to head home.
Well, as far as I knew, Tanya was just going about her normal day. I mean, she would have been getting off work at 9 o'clock, having breakfast, and then heading home.
Little does Tom know, Tanya never makes it home that day. Three days since Tom last saw Tanya, he's on the job, clearing a housing tract in Maple Valley.
The city was requiring the wetlands be cleared of all what they called hostile vegetation. It's like blackberry bushes.
Around 10 a.m., Tom's cell phone rings. It's Tanya's boss at her daytime job in Bellevue.
She tells me that Tanya hasn't showed up to her last 2 shifts. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to get Tanya in trouble. Maybe she just overslept. I'm trying to keep my calm and telling her, I'll try and get a hold of Tanya and have her call you.
Concerned, Tom immediately calls Tanya's cell phone.
I started walking back to my truck and dialing Tanya's phone number. She didn't set up her voicemail, so it goes to the little message that says, the cellular customer you are trying to reach has not set up his voicemail box yet.
Mailbox cannot accept new messages at this time. Please try again later. Goodbye.
She may not answer anyone else's calling in, but she'll answer mine. So now I'm starting to worry.
Tom drives to their home in Maple Valley, thinking that perhaps Tanya is there.
I make it to the door and I go, Tanya! And no answer, so I go and I check the downstairs. I double back and go up the staircase. And we have 3 bedrooms up there. And she's not in any of them.
Tom checks the garage. Tanya's car is not there.
The more I'm checking and not finding her, the more the panic is building inside me.
Desperate to locate Tanya, Tom makes an emergency phone call.
911, what are you reporting?
My wife didn't show up for work last night. and she's not home, and I haven't heard from her in 2 days. Can you just check and see if there are any accidents involved Tanya Ryder, R-I-D-E-R?
I'm not showing any injury accidents in that area, but I can connect you with State Patrol and you can check if there are any injury accidents on the freeway.
The 911 operator tells him there are no reports of an accident on the highway either. But this doesn't bring Tom any relief. In a single morning, Tom's world is turned upside down.
So at this point, I'm losing it. I start thinking about what could have happened.
For Tom, the reality of the situation starts to set in. No one has seen Tanya since she left her overnight shift at the grocery store Thursday morning.
Tom realizes, oh my God, she's been gone and unaccounted for in everybody's life for 2 days.
Coming up, the clock is ticking, and Tom is struggling to get police to investigate Tanya's disappearance.
I was furious. I was not going to let them not do their job.
In 48 hours. She's not at home either, and she's not answering her cell phone.
I'm pretty much starting to panic at this point, because Tanya will answer my phone calls when I call.
All of a sudden, she's not where she's supposed to be. He knew there was something wrong.
My adrenaline was pumping. I was having trouble breathing right. It's just, where is she?
There is one more place Tom Ryder thinks to check.
I'm headed to her second job, just in case. That's my last safe possibility that's in my brain, is that they've changed her shift and she had to work at her second job.
On the highway to Bellevue, Tom keeps trying her cell phone. There's no answer.
So of course his mind starts playing mind games. The what if. Has someone kidnapped her? Is she alive? Is she dead?
Somebody stole her car. Somebody robbed her at gunpoint. She's got amnesia and she's in the hospital and they stole her wallet and have her ID. All these different possibilities are just flooding into my mind.
Nearing Bellevue, Tom calls 911 again. This time, he wants to report his wife missing.
911 connects him with the Bellevue Police Department, and they make arrangements to meet him and interview him to see what's going on with his wife.
Minutes later, Tom arrives at the department store where Tanya works. He meets the store manager, and they start talking before the police arrive. The manager tells Tom that Tanya is due at the store within the hour for her regular shift at 1 o'clock that day. Tom waits anxiously to see if Tanya will show up for work.
My brain is still trying to cling to the safe possibilities. It's still trying to believe that she's going to be here and everything's going to be all right.
1 o'clock passes. No Tanya.
When she had a schedule, she stuck to it. And so Tom knows that when she has not shown up for work, he has a reason to be really alarmed.
For Tom, there is no longer any question about it. Tanya has truly disappeared.
It was painful and scary, and it was like someone had just torn duct tape off of my eyes. I was in a mode that I hope no one ever has to go through.
Soon, responding to Tom's 911 call, a Bellevue police officer arrives at the department store. He questions Tom.
What does your wife look like? When was the last time she was seen? What was she wearing? Have there been any disputes between you?
The officer determines Tanya's last known whereabouts were at her nighttime job. Immediately, they call the grocery store to speak with Tanya's boss, who is able to locate a security video that shows Tanya leaving the store at 9 a.m. on Thursday, September 20th. It's the last time anyone sees Tanya Ryder.
The tape showed Tanya leaving, walking into the parking lot, apparently normal. No one was following her.
They do have her leaving at 9 o'clock in the morning, Thursday the 20th, and getting into her car and driving away.
She didn't look stressed, like she was being followed.
Because the tape shows Tanya heading home to Maple Valley in her own car, on her own free will, the officer informs Tom he will have to refile a report with the King County Police. John Urquhart is a sergeant at that precinct.
Bellevue decided she lives in Maple Valley, our jurisdiction. Therefore, the King County Sheriff's Office will have jurisdiction.
Tom immediately heads back to his home in Maple Valley.
I know, based on a conversation I had with the officer, that I won't get referred to the right 911 operator until I get closer to home.
As soon as he crosses the county line, Tom calls 911 from the car. This time, he's connected to a King County emergency operator.
My wife is missing. My wife's name is Tanya Ryder.
He goes through the story again, and he couldn't find any record of her being in an automobile accident, so there had to be some other explanation what had happened to her. And he was quite insistent. Something else is going on here. You need to help me.
Tom urges the King County operator to file a missing persons report for Tanya. The operator declines to file the report. Before anything else can happen, the operator tells Tom he must check the local hospitals and jails for Tanya.
The moment that I'm making those phone calls, calling the jails, calling the morgues, calling the hospitals, I'm praying that it's the wrong way, that I'm looking in the wrong direction, but I have to look.
There's no record of Tanya anywhere.
So I call back the 911 operator. She's not in any of your jails. She's not in any of your hospitals. She's not in any of your morgues. She's not at home. My wife is missing.
For a second time, Tom asks the operator to file a missing persons report for Tanya.
Just because she's missed work, did you guys have any arguments?
No.
Discussions? Problems? Have you checked any other family members in the area?
House in Maple Valley.
Have you contacted any other family members that she may go to?
And talk to her family members.
Again, the operator declines to file the report, insisting that Tom must try contacting Tanya's friends and family members.
History has told us in other cases it's very, very important for family members to be contacted. Oftentimes that'll solve the case very quickly.
I haven't called her family in years. I called each and every one of them.
They didn't have a close relationship, and they haven't heard from her in months.
Tom calls King County 911 a third time. He knows with each passing minute, Tanya could be in danger. So he pleads with the operator to take the report so the search for Tanya can begin.
He's very, very insistent. He says, I've called the family members, I've called the hospitals, I've called the morgue, I've called the jail. I've done all you've asked me to do.
They're going to have to take a report now. Now it's their turn, is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking now they're going to come on board. Now they're going to start looking for my wife.
But instead, the operator declines to file a missing persons report for a third time. He cites certain criteria that Tanya's disappearance must meet before it becomes an active case.
Is the person suicidal? Are they being treated for a mental health issue? Are they elderly? Is there some sort of suspicious circumstance that surrounds their disappearance?
But Tanya's disappearance does not meet any of them.
Can you send an officer over to at least take the report?
Officers don't take these reports in person. She does not meet the criteria to take a missing persons report on. She is an adult. She's not been suicidal. What we're telling you is that she doesn't meet the criteria.
Tomorrow.
Okay, what we're telling you is that she doesn't meet the criteria. Okay, we don't go actively searching for missing people, sir.
Even the checkbooks are here. I'm telling you, something has happened to my wife.
The 911 operator suggests to Tom that Tanya likely left on her own.
She's a normal, adult, working female, and she disappeared, which is her right.
She's over the age of 18. She's an adult. She can go where she wants, and she doesn't have to tell you.
Shocked by the operator's refusal to file a missing persons report, Tom struggles to contain his anger.
You're treating it like, oh, well, idiot, his wife just left him, and oh, hell with it. How long does she have to be missing before you'll take a report?
There is no set time.
So what you're telling me is, unless she turns up dead, you're not going to care.
At this point, I am trying very hard to keep an even keel in my voice. If I knew where he was, I would have been down there forcing his hand to write the report.
4 days after she was last seen, no official search for Tanya Ryder is underway. 3 911 calls from Tom Ryder have failed to initiate an investigation, and he fears that the longer it takes to start looking for her, the less likely they will find her alive. If Tanya is in danger, the police need to get involved, and the clock is ticking.
Tom at this point is at a loss for what to do without any help, so he has to take it on himself.
Tom contemplates going to the police station to make his case in person, but he fears that they too will reject his plea to start an investigation. Instead, he decides to take matters into his own hands by involving the media.
I figure I'm going to force their hand. I figured I'm not going to let them not look for my wife. I'm going to call the media and make it loud and messy.
But the news station requires a police-issued case number in order to run a missing person story, to avoid inadvertently reporting false information.
It's a catch-22 because they can't run a story without a case number, And on the other hand, Tom can't get a case number. He has opened every door to obtain an answer, to point him in the right direction, to give him the next step, and all the doors are slammed in his face.
All he can do now is try to search for Tanya on his own. As night falls across the Northwest, Tom Ryder drives up and down the roads of Maple Valley, Washington, looking for his missing wife.
I was just driving back and forth, scanning the edges of the road, looking for any indication that a car had left the roadway.
He's looking everywhere. He's looking in people's windows as he drives by. He's looking for accident scenes. He's looking for grease on the highway.
I lost count on how many times I went back and forth. I was panicking.
Late that night, Tom thinks of one final scenario. Perhaps Tanya has retreated to the site of their future dream house.
Maybe she's just frazzled and she's out at the property trying to relax her nerves. I'm not believing it for 1 second, but there's no way I'm gonna go check.
Tom drives 92 miles to see if Tanya is there. But she is still nowhere to be found.
Hours are ticking by, minutes are ticking by, and Tanya is still missing.
Coming up, Tom fights to get his wife's case activated.
These people aren't helping me. In fact, they're standing in my way. And inside me, something snapped.
It's crazy. The man was trying to hold it together as his life is falling apart.
He's also furious. Despite repeated calls to 911, Tom can't get police to launch a missing persons case.
I was waging a one-man battle against overwhelming odds just to even get heard.
But time is of the essence, and Tom knows he needs the police if he has any chance of finding his wife.
I know I can't do it all myself. I know I need their help. The chances of finding her were better with more people looking.
Four days have now passed since Tanya Ryder went missing. Tom makes his fourth call in 48 hours to 911.
Operator 65. Hi, Tom Ryder.
This time, to Tom's surprise, he gets a different response.
This different operator made a different subjective decision from the standpoint that Tom had done everything else we'd asked him to do, and she's still not home.
I believe that she suddenly met the criteria because they figured out that I wasn't going to go away.
What's going to happen is we're going to list her, and if someone runs her name anywhere in the country, they will know that she is missing and they'll call.
The King County Police finally agree to take a missing persons report.
And he's really kind of shocked. Wow, the door opened.
The name Tanya Ryder is finally in the system.
And they said, well, we're going to send an officer out to take your statement.
And that was a great relief for Tom. He couldn't relax, but at least he could grab a breath.
5 hours later, a King County police officer arrives at Tom's home in Maple Valley.
He hasn't even gotten out of the car yet, and I'm standing there waiting for him at his door. I tell him the same things that I told the 911 operator. I need your help to find my wife.
Tom invites the officer to search his home.
Yeah, I say, if you'd like to search my house, you don't need a warrant. You can look right now.
Tom wants the police department to know, I want you to do whatever you have to do in the least amount of time to do it in order to find my wife. There's something wrong. I feel like she's in danger.
Although Tom is being very forthcoming, in these cases, the husband often becomes the #1 suspect.
He asked me to wait in the driveway because he wants to search the house without me leading him or anything like that.
We're real interested in kind of looking around and determining, did she pack a bag or personal items missing, wallet, credit cards, money, that sort of thing.
He doesn't see any blood spatter. He doesn't see furniture turned upside down. He doesn't see any indication of dispute.
He noticed the things that I was telling him, that her paychecks were on the banister, her bank card was on the counter.
Nothing was missing from the house, and in fact, some of her credit cards were still there.
The officer tells Tom that a King County sergeant will still have to determine whether or not a detective will take the case.
So again, Tom is kind of one step forward, 2 steps back.
But meanwhile, Tanya's disappearance has a case number now, so the media will run the story.
He gets it out on the news to let the public know that his wife is missing.
Bellevue police say a surveillance tape shows the 33-year-old 5'10" blonde woman getting into her car and driving away as normal as can be.
Tom says there is no reason for her to run away, and now he's putting up a $25,000 a reward to help find her.
I called every local media outlet at this point. I was going to make sure there was going to be an investigation.
It's the 5th day since Tanya Ryder went missing. After another sleepless night, Tom goes to work.
It's the only thing I knew to keep my mind from going over the endless scenario of possibilities. If I was doing nothing, I was thinking these horrific thoughts.
After seeing all the news coverage, Tom's boss asks his employees to draw up hundreds of flyers. They email copies to as many people as they can.
By 10 o'clock that morning, they had flyers from Canada, all the way down to Oregon and all the way over to Utah.
They, of all the people, knew what type of a couple Tom and Tanya Ryder were and how devastated Tom was. So anything that they could do and jump in and help him, they were there.
At King County Police Headquarters, officials finally decide to hand Tanya's case to a detective.
So we didn't find anything that really told us she left voluntarily, nothing that said she didn't leave voluntarily or had been a victim of foul play. So at that point, there certainly was enough questions as to where she was, so the detectives needed to do follow-up work beginning first thing Monday morning.
To start the investigation, the detective needs Tanya's banking information, so police can track any recent activity on her accounts.
We asked Tom, what kind of credit cards or checking accounts does she have?
They need credit card information. They need bank statements and accounts and PIN numbers and codes.
I told him that we had a joint account and a joint savings account, and that Tanya had a Nordstrom Visa, and that's all she has with her.
Later that day, Tom tries again to reach Tanya. He can't let go of the feeling that she's out there, somewhere.
I just try and call her phone again, because it's been giving me this weird feeling of knowing if her phone's still alive, maybe she is. And when I called this time, it went straight to the message. It didn't ring at all, which meant the battery died.
Whatever hope Tom has that Tanya is alive evaporates.
There's nothing left that I can do. I've done everything that I can do. And inside me, something snapped. I kind of fell down and I couldn't get up. Can't move.
Just when he's lost all hope, Tom's cell phone rings. It's the King County investigator. With some incredible news. Police have tracked activity on one of Tanya's bank accounts.
We're going, whoa, what's going on here? Somebody's using that card.
Coming up, a surprising tip leads police to an unexpected interrogation.
Something's not right with this guy's story. And something's just not right with this guy's story.
His wife Tanya has disappeared.
I'm feeling hopeless. I'm feeling completely powerless.
But 4 days after Tanya's disappearance, police think they have a break. There is some activity on one of Tanya's bank accounts.
The detective calls Tom and lets him know that there's a ray of hope.
It basically gave me the impression that Tanya was alive, and that she was out there and she was okay.
Tom calls the detective on his wife's case to inquire about the details of the new discovery.
I asked her specifically what account she was monitoring that she saw activity on. She said, I saw activity on Tanya's checking account.
As far as we knew, she had the only access to the account. Therefore, any activity on the account would be through her debit card.
Unfortunately, there is a mix-up with the account information.
I said, that's a joint account. That was me. I put the gas in my truck because I was out looking for it and ran out of cash.
Tom realized it was his purchase off of the card, and it was nothing to do with Tanya. And so he was again devastated.
Amid the confusion, one thing becomes clear. There is no activity on any of the accounts that connect to Tanya Ryder. Which means there are still no leads in the case, no evidence to suggest foul play, and no clues to where Tanya Ryder might be.
There has to be some evidence of where she might be to give us a starting point. And we didn't have that. Again, she disappeared into thin air, as far as we could tell.
Now that the bank records are a dead end, Tom demands police start physically searching for Tanya.
A natural reaction from people is call out search and rescue, call out your helicopter, go look for her.
But police insist that without a hard lead, there's little point beginning a search.
Remember, we've got her leaving the city of Bellevue, driving 20-some miles to Maple Valley. That's a big area. So where do you search for Tanya Ryder? The reality is, you don't, because she could have gone anywhere.
Tom also demands that they check Tanya's cell phone records.
He's also thinking, why can't they get information from the cell phone company?
I knew they had the ability to trace a cell phone's location to within a cell tower's radius.
But legally, the cell phone company can't just give that kind of information to police.
The problem is, people have a right to privacy. People expect that the police are not going to be able to trace their movements unless there's a reason to do so.
In order to obtain the records, the phone company requires a warrant. But King County Police can't get one.
In the state of Washington, to get a search warrant, you have to have probable cause to believe a crime has been committed. And at this point, we did not have probable cause to believe a crime had been committed. We didn't have an inkling or a suspicion that crime had been committed, much less probable cause.
With no other leads in sight, King County detectives continued to pursue Tanya's cell phone records. Meanwhile, Tom is breaking down from the seemingly hopeless investigation.
Tom is beside himself. He's sleep deprived. He can't keep food down, and he starts breaking down. He's wasting away, mentally and physically.
When you're living through it, it is 100% nightmare. It is everything in your world slows down to a crawl. I was losing all control. And the whole time you cannot take your mind off of the well-being of your loved one.
But the situation is about to get far worse for Tom. Tanya's boss at the grocery store where she was last seen calls police to voice doubts about him.
This is calling from the Bellevue Fred Meyer store because I wanted to get some information for somebody because one of my employees is missing. Something's not right with this guy's story. And I just need to let somebody know that something's just not right with this guy's story.
Eight days have now passed since Tanya Ryder disappeared. The recent suspicion raised by Tanya's boss is the only thing police have to go on. So they turn their attention to the husband, a usual suspect in these types of cases. But they have no evidence against Tom Ryder.
We have to eliminate people from being a suspect in cases like this. And certainly the husband is the number one suspect. Absent some other sort of evidence that might implicate him, what we decided to do was give him a lie detector test, put him on the polygraph, and see how he does.
I get a call from the detective. Can you come in for an interview? No problem. I got nothing to hide. They just wanted to get some facts straight.
Tom heads to the Kent Justice Center, where he sits for a preliminary interview before the polygraph. As the interview progresses, the nature of the questions starts to irritate Tom.
Was your wife all right the last time you saw her? Was your wife unharmed? Did you do anything to anger her? So it's just, did you hurt your wife? Everything except for, did you kill your wife?
Tom gets the feeling police are doubting his innocence.
They were trying to coax a confession out of me. They had made up their minds that I had done something.
All he could think of was, are they waiting for me to stand up and scream, I'm guilty? I murdered her?
I wasn't fully aware of just how rattled I already was. It was like, this is it. They're going to be crucifying me down here.
Aching with fatigue, Tom feels the walls closing in on him.
My wife never laid a hand on her, never raised a finger to her. I haven't done anything. I knew I was at my breaking point.
Coming up, the stunning conclusion to Tanya Ryder's mysterious disappearance.
So we put detectives out looking to see what they could find. I mean, it's a needle in a haystack.
Loving husband to a person being questioned about his wife's disappearance. Now, Tanya's boss is raising suspicions about Tom to the police.
Something's not right with this guy's story. And I just need to let somebody know that something's just not right with this guy's story.
Since there are no other leads in the case, police ask Tom Ryder to take a polygraph.
He's thinking, these people want to prove me guilty.
They wanted me to rule myself out or convict myself.
While following up on the lead from Tanya's boss, police are still pursuing a warrant so the phone company can release Tanya's cell phone records.
Something that took time and a tremendous amount of frustration that we couldn't get to those cell phone records.
Finally, there's a break. A sympathetic judge signs the warrant, and police are able to retrieve Tanya's cell phone records. The information they obtain takes the investigation in a completely new direction.
The detectives were able to look at the records and determine which tower was accessed. They were able to narrow that down into essentially a pie-shaped area 3 to 5 miles out in a particular direction.
The latest is that it's actually hitting off the southeast of that tower. We can give you the latitude, longitude of that tower.
Within this area is the highway Tanya Ryder takes on her daily commute.
So now we know she was probably on her way home. So we put detectives out, walking down that highway, looking to see what they could find. We fan out on each side of the roadway and just start walking down the shoulder. And this is a state highway. There's a lot of traffic, 50,000 cars a day on this roadway. I mean, it's a needle in a haystack.
As detectives are grilling Tom Ryder, police continue with the Maple Valley Fire Department to search desperately for any clues.
It could have been just the phone tossed out of the car, or it could be the whole car, or nothing at all.
At 3:20 p.m., officials make an astonishing discovery.
We found a vehicle about a quarter-mile south of the south end of Jones Road.
He finds the car down an embankment off the highway, totally out of sight. But the car's down an embankment about 12 feet, upside down, and Tanya Ryder is hanging upside down, still in that car, 7 days later.
Rescue workers are in shock. They check inside the car to see if Tanya is alive.
170, Turkey, we got movement.
We got movement. County, I need an aid car, please. This is that missing female, Tanya Ryder, that was on the news. We found her vehicle, and she's still moving inside of it. Oh my God, this was a car accident. I think a car accident. She's been trapped for this long. Okay. Wow.
Tanya Ryder has been in a terrible car accident and has been trapped 10 feet below the highway. Almost unbelievably, 8 days later, she is still alive.
The car was on its side in a precarious spot, driver's side down, so she was on her side for 8 days hanging from the seatbelt. The airbags had deployed.
We opened the door and made contact with Miss Ryder. She was on her left side, suspended by her seatbelt in her seat, unable to reach anything, and she looked like she was hurting. She was just laying very quiet and just asking for help.
Officers on the scene report the stunning turn of events to King County headquarters, where Tom Ryder is trying to rule himself out as a suspect. They give him the news.
He said we found her car. It was at that moment, the moment that I almost collapsed, and I said, "Is she all right?"
Miracle survivor, a woman missing for 8 days, turns up alive, trapped in her car, thanks to her cell phone.
A woman who was missing for more than a week has turned up alive just as police were getting ready to question her husband about her disappearance.
Her seatbelt suspended in her car. Ryder was dehydrated but conscious.
Firefighters carefully remove Tanya from the car. She has been without any food or water for 8 days, and she is suffering many severe injuries.
She was then placed in the back of the medic unit and then airlifted to Harborview Hospital.
Her organs had started shutting down because of lack of water intake. She had broken bones. They thought that she was going to lose her leg. She was in horrible shape.
Doctors tell Tom that in a few more hours, Tanya might not have survived.
My wife is in critical condition and fighting for her life. Because of the way she was pinned, and they're hoping not, but they may have to take one of her legs. The only thing I ask of them is to give her the best chance.
Miraculously, doctors save Tanya's leg, but her condition remains critical. Hours after the rescue, Tanya Ryder wakes up in the hospital.
The first thing I remember is waking up and seeing a nurse next to me and feeling very thirsty. I wasn't aware of what had happened to my body.
Tom and Tanya's reunion is emotional for both of them.
I didn't really understand everything that was going on, but when I saw Tom, I saw my comfort space. I knew everything was going to be okay.
She recognized me, and I saw tears well up in her eyes. Her expression softened, tears started to flow, and she knew that I was there. And I love her more than I love my own life. It was a big relief, but it was also absolute pain to see my wife bandaged from head to toe.
Tanya's car was found less than 6 miles from their home in Maple Valley, a fact that haunts Tom to this day.
I drove right past where she was off the road and couldn't see her. But I didn't know it. I drove right by her lots of times and I didn't know it.
In the aftermath of their extraordinary ordeal, Tom struggles to balance gratitude with rage.
She was in that car for 8 days. All I know is no one else should have to go through what she went through. When the simple pinging of a cell phone could have led him to her an hour.
1 week after Tanya's rescue, the King County Sheriff holds a news conference and apologizes to the riders for the limitations of the sheriff's office in this particular case, and for the frustration Tom endured. Today, 3 years after the accident, Tanya and Tom still live in Maple Valley. Their dream house is on hold for now. Tom is working with writer Jan Sidnam on a book about Tanya's remarkable ordeal.
I sure hope that no one else has to go through what we went through. That's our hope with this book.
Tanya still struggles with physical repercussions from her time in the crushed vehicle. She says she retains no memory of the crash or what came after. Instead, she is sustained by the fact that she survived.
People who are trained in the medical profession, like doctors or nurses, are trained to help people, not hurt them.
She had killed one of our hometown heroes.
When you have a .38 gun and you have hatred for somebody, bad things are going to happen.
She named her right before she died as the person who had shot her. She is referred to as the most hated woman in America.
Corpus Christi is a laid-back community. We're on the seaside, and it's a lot of water activities, water sports, and everything. It's kind of got a small-town vibe to it. My name is Mark Skirka. At that time, I was called a chief prosecutor for the Nueces County District Attorney's Office. That afternoon, I was working at the district attorney's office when I heard there was a standoff at the Days Inn where somebody had been shot. I also heard that the suspect had been holding a gun against her head for several hours with the police and refusing to surrender.
The Friday afternoon it happened, I was contacted by my supervisor and dispatched to the scene of the shooting. My name is Ray Rivera Jr. I was a Corpus Christi police officer for 30 years. We lost a great person. She had killed one of our hometown heroes.
Quintanilla was born on April the 16th, 1971. She was one of 3 siblings. I'm Dr. Joni Johnston, clinical and forensic psychologist and private investigator. She had a pretty musical family. Her dad had a restaurant for a period of time, but he noticed early on that his youngest daughter, Selena, had just this magical voice, and she began performing in the restaurant when she was 6 years old.
At the time, her dad had his own band, and then he basically made a band out of his own family. His son became the guitar player, his daughter became the drummer, and Selena became the singer.
As time went on, Selena was becoming more popular, not just here locally, but around the state. And then we started to learn she was just really popular nationwide.
She was incredibly famous during her reign. My name is Rod Demery, and I'm a retired homicide detective. She was a Latina singer, and people were wildly crazy about her music. I think her sort of a hybrid, from American music to Latin music was really interesting. She had fans of all sorts, but particularly in the Latino community.
She became really the queen of Tejano music, and this was a form of music that was very, very popular in Mexican-American community, particularly in southern Texas, but it wasn't something that was necessarily widespread in the United States. And so it was so wonderful, I think, for her community to feel like this is somebody who is an up-and-coming star. She's representing us, and she's representing our culture, and she's representing our music.
Selena was a superstar in her fans' eyes. Selena had a God-given ability to sing and to bring entertainment to people from all walks of life.
She had such a sparkle about her, and her voice was so gifted.
She was a fantastic individual, a great young woman. Whoever met her liked her. She had a smile and a kind word for everybody. And everybody just loved her. They thought the world of her. Boy, we could use more Selenas in this world.
Selena loved entertaining the public, loved singing, loved being on stage, but she had another secret passion. She loved to do fashion design. Most of her costumes were self-designed by her. She didn't have these highfalutin fashion designers following around. She came up with these ideas on her own and wanted to branch out into that field. Selena opened 2 boutiques, one in Corpus Christi, one in San Antonio. They sold clothing, they gave hairdressing appointments, they did nails, they did all kinds of things for women. But Selena also had a sideline where she was trying to start a clothing line down in Mexico, and she worked with a fashion designer from there to help bring that clothing line into existence. Well, things were sailing along pretty well with the businesses, and Selena's career was increasing and increasing. And Selena's dad, he started hearing things. He heard things like people were not getting the stuff they were supposed to get from the fan club. Essentially, like you sent in your money and you were supposed to get like a signed picture from Selena or some membership card. He was getting complaints that people were not receiving what they'd been promised. He was very concerned about this because as he knew that if you get mad at the fan club, that may make you mad at Selena. He realized something was up and something didn't smell right.
We'll never know exactly what happened in that room, but Selena decides to leave. She gets up and she's walking to the door.
As Selena was walking out the door, she was shot in the back.
After being shot, Selena ran from the hotel room. She ran across the grassy area toward the office. She dropped her cell phone. She dropped the briefcase full of folders in her haste to get away. As she's rounding the pool area, she drops her purse. Selena is running away with a gunshot wound to her back. She gets into the office where she collapses on the floor.
Since the bullet hit an artery, she bled out very, very quickly.
One of the front desk clerks come over and said, "Who shot you? Who shot you?" And Selena, with her dying breath, tells her, "Yolanda, room 158.
Yolanda Saldivar was from San Antonio, born and raised in San Antonio, came from a large family.
She was the youngest of 7 siblings. She was also very small and a little bit on the heavier side, and we all know how painful that can be when you stand out in any way in school. So she was subjected to quite a bit of bullying growing up. And she also, I think, was somewhat of a loner. She was very smart. She did well in school, academically, but I think socially she was pretty isolated. I think her family was pretty close-knit. They loved each other, but there were a lot of financial struggles. Even though Yolanda was young, and it would have been very difficult financially for her, she actually took in those 3 children and really considered them her own. And I think that really added just a huge responsibility to her, and probably a lot of stress as well, because she's trying to figure out her own career, her own life, and at the same time, she's this kind of instant mom to 3 young children. After this happened, Yolanda decided that she wanted to become a nurse.
Most people that get into nursing healthcare is because they genuinely feel the need to care for people. Nurses in particular. That's pretty evident in Yolanda.
She spent several years balancing nursing school with taking care of her 3 charges. At the age of 30, she completes her nursing degree and she begins working as a nurse, and that seems to be going well for a while. But I think there was a part of Yolanda that really wanted to have more fun. One of the things that Yolanda really clung to, no matter how tight finances were, is she seemed to really, really love live music. It was through this that she ended up attending a Selena concert. She just is enamored with her and wants to be a part of her life in some way.
After one of the concerts one time, Selena's dad, Abraham Quintanilla, was approached by Yolanda Saldivar and asked if she could start a Selena fan club. At the time, Selena's dad thought, great. I mean, this is a way to get my daughter more exposure, the band more exposure, get her name out there and stuff. So he readily agreed to let Yolanda Saldivar start a fan club for Selena.
I certainly think that knowing that Yolanda had been a nurse would have been something that would be reassuring. You would kind of be like, yeah, this is a person who is responsible, who's self-disciplined, who's a nurturer, and who is trustworthy, because these are all the qualities we tend to imbue in nurses.
I believe Yolanda wanted to start a fan club for Selena because it put her, Yolanda, in the spotlight. People would be around, people would like her, people would want to talk to her. Like the publicity, the limelight, the glamour.
The relationship was actually a business relationship, and I think in Yolanda's mind, she probably felt they were a lot closer, probably felt part of the family. So I think it made her, or did a great deal for her esteem and a great deal for her sort of self-worth when she thought she was part of that group, that family.
What develops almost as big sister, little sister relationship, where I think Selena starts relying on Yolanda. She isn't around a lot of people outside of her family. And so she and Yolanda start becoming very, very good friends. And Selena, I think, begins confiding in her. And she then ultimately asked Yolanda to work for her for money. You know, she basically says, oh, you've done a great job with this fan club. Would you become my personal assistant? And Yolanda, I think, this has come true for her. And so she quits her nursing job and dedicates all of her time to being with Selena, helping Selena. And then it becomes even more expanded when Selena decides to open some clothing boutiques, which is a real passion for her. And she asked Yolanda to help manage these clothing stores. And so what happens over time is you have somebody who started out as a fan club volunteer, basically, and has become an integral part of Selena's life.
She had access to Selena's credit cards. She had power to make contracts and make business deals. She had the power to run the boutiques and do whatever she needed to do with the employees or the merchandise at the boutiques. In fact, she just had pretty much everything. Yolanda Saldivar and Selena were almost inseparable. They would give each other gifts. Selena trusted her implicitly.
I think for Yolanda, she has finally achieved a dream of hers, which is to be needed by somebody who is special and powerful and a star. And I think that gave Yolanda this sense of self-esteem. I think it filled a hole that she had in her. I would imagine there were times when she looked back and thought, wow, here I was, 4 feet 9 inches tall, a little bit chubby, being bullied by all these classmates, being left out, not having any friends. Look at me now. I am one of the closest friends to one of the rising superstars in music. And I think she absolutely loved everything about it. I think if Yolanda had been 15, 16 years old, parents going into a room of a teenager and seeing a life-size cutout of Selena in the room and posters everywhere, they think, wow, my daughter is really a fan, a super fan. I think for a 30-something-year-old woman to have essentially a shrine to the person that she really is working for, I think it does speak to how central Selena was to, in some respects, her emotional well-being. I think it just reflects that this was her world. There would be no doubt walking into Yolanda's home that Selena was the most important person in her life.
Selena's father was very concerned about money being taken from the fan club.
He realized that something was happening. Money had been missing from the fan club. People weren't getting their stuff. He was getting all these complaints, but he didn't know exactly what was happening at that
time. Eventually, Selena's father realizes that Yolanda has taken quite a bit of money, upwards of $30,000, so he decides that he's going to call a meeting with the family and Yolanda and confront her with it.
When Abraham Quintanilla confronted her to her face, something's going on, people are complaining about that. Yolanda Saldivar always had an explanation. Oh, Mr. Quintanilla, they're trying to get more than what they paid for. Oh, Mr. Quintanilla, I did send them the picture. Oh, Mr. Quintanilla, they're just lying about it because they want more stuff. She always had an excuse for everything.
I find it shocking when anyone steals from somebody that trusts them, that cares for them, that believes in them, that becomes friends with them. That is shocking.
Even though Selena is loyal to Yolanda, she's not willing to ignore everything. I mean, she's somebody who is responsive to reason. I think she still cares about Yolanda at this point, for sure, but I think she starts realizing that Yolanda has made some mistakes. And so I think that while Selena probably still loved Yolanda, she was starting to not trust her. When Selena starts asking for those documents, I think perhaps the way Yolanda interpreted that is, does Selena care about me still? Is she still loyal to me? Or is she trying to appease me until she gets these documents? And then when she gets them, she's going to exit. She's going to fire me. She's going to, basically not be my friend anymore. And so she becomes very reluctant to give up those documents because I think for her, it's a way to hold on to Selena.
On March 30th, Selena Quintanilla drove over to the Days Inn to meet Yolanda Saldivar in her hotel room, ostensibly to get the records back.
It's part of their discussions, Yolanda tells her something horrible happened when I was in Mexico on business. I was raped by 2 men. And Selena is just very supportive of her. She's distressed by this. The next morning, Yolanda calls Selena and says, I need to go to the hospital and get checked out.
Selena, being the nice person she was, went over there and took her to the hospital. When they returned back to the motel, both of them went inside the hotel room.
An argument began. Shortly after that, Selena was shot.
Yolanda Saldivar retreated into the hotel room, came out a minute later with a towel wrapped around the gun, and went into a red truck that was parked there.
As it turned out, there was a police unit just 2 or 3 blocks from the motel. That police officer arrived as he's pulling into the driveway of the motel. Yolanda was attempting to exit the motel.
There was 2 uniformed policemen that tried to get her out of the car, tried to get her to surrender.
She refused to exit the vehicle, kept claiming she was going to shoot herself.
There was a real possibility that she was going to pull that trigger and end her own life.
She doesn't want to give up. She threatens suicide. She makes all kinds of accusations about different people and who's responsible for what.
And then the hostage negotiation team took over. After an hour or 2, she apparently was able to hear on the radio inside the truck that Selena was dead. She really lost it then and kept threatening to kill herself. The hostage negotiators kept trying to calm her down, to have her give herself up and not kill herself, which they finally accomplished after some 8 or 9 hours. And they took her immediately to the police department to be questioned.
Yolanda kept claiming she did not mean to do it, that it was an accident, it shouldn't have happened. From what we saw in the motel room, what we learned about missing money, it became apparent it was not an accident.
This lovely, beautiful, talented, up-and-coming star who everybody loved had been taken away at the age of 23. Nobody could understand that.
It has to be a devastating loss. The community took it as a loss. We lost a great person, a fantastic person, and that's just a tragedy to lose somebody like this.
50,000 people at least showed up to pay respects to her when she died. And I think the thirst from her fans for some justice and sometimes vengeance, I think was incredible.
The magnitude of this case was higher than any other case I had tried before. I mean, right after the killing, we had, a bunch of satellite trucks and people from everywhere, journalists from everywhere, interviewing us about this case. Remember that this was shortly after the O.J. Simpson case and the verdict that some people were quite dissatisfied with that has happened. So we felt like the spotlight was on us to do a good job.
The pressure is that when you have someone that iconic, then any mistake you make is going to be highlighted. Everybody's watching, so the pressure is immense.
The biggest challenge in the investigation was to prove that Yolanda Saldivar committed murder. Not that she shot Selena. Everybody was aware of that, but she committed murder, that it was not an accident.
In a homicide, you have to prove an intentional killing. It couldn't have been an accident. In this case, it was clear to me that it wasn't an accident because of what she had done before and after the killing.
From witnesses, we learned that there was an argument in the room, and that they had seen Yolanda Saldivar step out of the room with a pistol still in her hand.
She follows Selena out the door, raises her hand out like this, and it seems like she's going to shoot Selena again. However, by this time, Selena has already gotten away. But she does say one last thing to Selena, the word. She calls her and then retreats into the hotel room. Did she call 911? Did she call the police? No. What she did was hide her gun, wrap it in a towel, and try to flee the scene. This is a person that's not acting as if an accident happened. She's a nurse, for God's sake. She didn't even try to give first aid to Selena.
She knows how to save lives. In fact, if she wanted to save her life, she absolutely could have. Selena died from blood loss. Surely, as a nurse, one of the first things you know how to do is to stop blood loss.
Here's a person that then gets into the truck and tries to flee the scene. Does that sound like an accident to you?
It was very important that we learned that Selena had mentioned the name of the person that shot her. She was able to identify that individual.
Selena was the best witness. I mean, she named her right before she died as the person who had shot her.
After the shooting of Selena Quintanilla, the police, in doing their investigation of the crime scene and the murder itself, also did some more background into the finances and see what other things that might have been out of place with Yolanda Saldivar. The detective was able to find certain areas of financial improprieties in there, where, say, a radio station had been paid so much money, but Yolanda kept a cut of it. Somebody was supposed to get so much money, but Yolanda kept a cut of it. So there was a lot of discrepancy in the amount of thousands of dollars. Here she had access to money, power, stature, reputation. But when Selena fired her and Selena walked out that door, Yolanda Saldivar's life walked out that door. And she couldn't handle it.
Yolanda shot Selena because Selena was going to tell her dad something to the effect of, "You're taking money from us. You've been stealing money. We're going to call the police." Yolanda did not want to go to jail.
She began working for a private dermatology clinic, and that went well at the beginning, but ultimately her employer began noticing that some of the books were not exactly lining up.
The office manager had been on leave for several months, taking care of her sick mother. When she came back, she found that Yolanda Saldivar had been doing the books, in fact, had been embezzling from the company.
They did an investigation and found out that Yolanda had stolen over $9,000.
I think the doctor saw that as quite a betrayal.
When you turn on people that are your friends, that care for you, that have helped you out, that's just wrong.
The nurses come out and basically say, we examined Yolanda. We don't see any physical evidence of any kind of sexual assault. I think it's really important to note that false rape allegations are extremely rare. When that happens, it's usually for a couple of different reasons. It's kind of a manipulative attempt to be seen as a victim. I certainly think in Yolanda's case, it was also a diversion. So this is going to take the focus off of all these other issues we have between us, and this is going to unite us in terms of me being a sexual assault victim and you being a friend who's supporting me during this time. Yolanda had really taken a big gamble by reporting this rape, and Selena felt incredibly betrayed and hurt by this.
Selena had been given Yolanda Saldivar the benefit of the doubt, but could no longer do so because she was telling too many stories. Selena knew she was going to fire her, and by this time, Yolanda Saldivar knew it too. She picks out the gun. She has to sign a declaration of intent to buy a handgun. She does that. 2 days later, she comes back and finishes paying off the gun and gets the gun.
I think that she was incredibly worried, anxious, distressed, and panicked at the thought of losing the relationship. And I think she thought it can go one of two ways, right? It can go where we repair this relationship, I somehow magically repair this, and we're just back to where we were. Or our relationship ends, and I am going to do something drastic. I am not going to allow Selena to walk away from me.
Yolanda Saldivar may not have been a physically imposing person, but when you have a .38 gun and you have hatred for somebody, bad things are going to happen.
At the police building, I met with Yolanda Saldivar. I asked her, Yolanda, it wasn't an accident. You shot her because you were mad. You shot her out of anger because you were about to get caught stealing money. And in Spanish, the term is fue de coraje. To me, that means it was because out of anger, out of rage. She put her head down, started to cry a bit, and nodded yes, and told me in Spanish, sí, señor, yes. I then stated to her, I remember this, Yolanda, that's very important. We need to get it in your statement. We need to put this down. She shook her head and says, nope, no, señor, it's not going in. She became aware if she put that down in writing, for sure she was going to get convicted of murder, of killing Selena, and end up in the penitentiary for a long time.
We knew it wasn't an accident. We had to prove in this case that Yolanda Saldivar intentionally tried to kill Selena Quintanilla. That was a thing that we had to prove beyond a reasonable doubt.
I think that there were people who absolutely were not only outraged, but counting the days until Yolanda went to trial. I heard her referred to back in the day as the most hated woman in America. I heard somebody say that because people were so angry.
It seemed to be at that time, shortly before the trial, the public here in Corpus Christi wanted Yolanda Saldivar to be convicted. They didn't care for her, they didn't like it. She had killed one of our hometown heroes.
Prosecution argued that Yolanda had systematically planned to murder Selena. And they talked about the gun, the fact that she had called her over that day and asked her to come alone, the fact that Selena was shot in the back, the fact that witnesses reported seeing Yolanda, as Selena is leaving, walk out the door with her gun raised again to Selena and calling her a
Despite her so-called love of Selena, the last thing she says to her best friend is I mean, those are the keys that I harped on with the jury to show that this was an intentional killing and not an accident.
The defense's argument was that it was an accident, that she had intended to kill herself, and that she had a gun in her purse, and that when Selena came to see her and they were talking, she became very distraught and became so distraught that she picked up the gun and she put it to her head. And that as Selena was trying to kind of wrestle the gun away from her or take it away from her, the gun accidentally goes off. and shoots Selena.
We proved that the gun would not go off accidentally. We had a gun expert look at the gun and show that it would not go accidentally. Yolanda Saldivar stared stone-faced. When the evidence came in front of her, the witness came in front of her, she was impassive. After a very short time in deliberations, the jury came back and found her guilty as charged of first-degree murder. And the jury ended up giving her life in prison. When the judge imposed a sentence on her after the judgment of the jury, Yolanda Saldivar did not visibly react.
Yolanda never showed remorse. She never apologized, to use that word, for shooting Selena. It felt good to get a guilty verdict, to know that we had done the right thing, that we were correct in our investigation.
Selena's family reacted emotionally, but quietly. Here was a hollow victory. They had gotten the maximum punishment on this person who had taken their beloved daughter, sister, wife away from them. And it had to have been a good feeling, but it's hard to feel good about a sentence when you know your loved one will never come back.
I think Yolanda was an obsessed fan. I think it was her personality. I think that's just who she is. She wants to be in someone's life, even if that person doesn't want them in their life. And if she gets dismissed, she's going to kill him or kill herself.
We see somebody, I think, who started out as a super fan, who morphed into more of a personal relationship. And so I think by the time that she ends up killing Selena, it's not an obsessive fan killing her idol. It is a combination of, I think, a sense of betrayal in a real relationship and a disgruntled employee who feels like she has been wronged in spite of all the evidence suggesting that she's the one doing the wrong.
It amazes me that a nurse would even go to that form of violence. I mean, people are trained in the medical profession, like doctors or nurses, are trained to help people, not hurt them. And to kill somebody has got to be the worst thing imaginable for somebody with that loyalty or oath to the medical profession. It's got to be a big betrayal.
It's interesting because people that choose those noble sort of professions, whether it's nursing or being a priest, sometimes they're just the wolf in sheep's clothing. The natural assumption is you're a nurse, you want to help people, you want to care for people, you're a very nurturing person. But they are sometimes worse.
The loss of Selena to her family is immeasurable. Her family has the most precious thing taken away from them. The pain in her heart is indescribable.
To the people that know Selena, what has been lost is her smile, her courage, her kindness to the community. People miss that. To this day, they still enjoy her music.
In 1995, after she died, her family started a foundation. The mission of this foundation is to really help children and help them develop and be the person they're meant to be. And I love the fact that one of their lines is, to help children sing whatever song they're meant to sing.
I think Selena's legacy continues, and I think there's probably a lot of barriers that have been knocked down because of her existence.
She has not died in spirit from our culture. She's very much alive, I think, and that is a legacy and tribute to what she did when she was alive.
People still wonder how big Selena would have eventually been. She was on the cusp of superstardom. Everybody wonders what could have been if we had her music to enjoy, and what would have happened if she hadn't been tragically cut down in the prime of her life.
In June 1993, a high-speed car chase across Long Island, New York, ended with a dark and unexpected revelation.
When the police walked over to the truck, they immediately smelled an odor that they recognized, which was a decomposing body.
Interrogated about the dead woman in the back of his truck, driver Joel Rifkin dropped a bombshell that would cause aftershocks for years.
He said there were 17 victims. The bodies were scattered all over the place.
Rifkin had chosen victims he hoped no one would miss.
He's preying on drug-addled, emaciated prostitutes.
At the time of New York's crack wars, some of the deaths barely registered.
It was just a violent time. We had this constant stream of murders going on.
Targeting the most vulnerable members of society, Joel Rifkin left a trail of devastation in his wake, proving himself to be one of the world's most evil killers. When Joel Rifkin crashed onto their radar, law enforcement had no idea how big the case would become.
We arrested a serial killer with the body in his car, and then it expanded from there.
New York State Police Captain Walter Heesh found himself leading the investigation into more than a dozen potential homicides.
The investigation stretched for many, many months. We had to corroborate his account of the many bodies that he dumped.
Nothing about Joel Rifkin had warned the world of the evil he was capable of. Retired detective Robert Paladinich briefly went to college with Rifkin and would later visit him behind bars to learn more about the enigmatic killer.
Joel didn't incrementally develop into a serial killer. There was no history of mindless vandalism as a child. There was no history of him torturing insects or bugs or frogs.
He was just this rather listless, uncertain, unhappy loner.
From a quiet, unpopular child to one of America's most notorious murderers, Joel Rifkin's story is seared into the memory of the investigators who brought him to justice.
The state police wasn't looking for a serial killer. The serial killer found us.
This killer's story begins in New York City. Joel David Rifkin was born on the 20th of January, 1959.
He was born to college students who weren't married and couldn't provide for him.
He was put up for adoption almost immediately.
Rifkin went to the home of a childless couple called Bernard and Jean Rifkin, who lived in Long Island. They were in fact to adopt a second child about 3 years later.
The father was a draftsman or an engineer. The mother had a master's degree, which was very unusual for the 1950s.
Rifkin's early life with his adopted parents and younger sister was trouble-free.
He was loved, he was close to his parents. Parents were very attentive to the children. Joel grew up going on vacations with his family.
The family lived in the affluent commuter town of East Meadow on Long Island, about 32 miles from downtown Manhattan.
Oh, it's a nice rural area in Nassau County. Very nice neighborhood.
As Rifkin moved through his school life, he began to hit roadblocks.
He went to local public schools. His parents were very focused on education, but to their disappointment, Joel was never a good student. He always struggled in school. Later on, it was learned that he was dyslexic, but that wasn't something back then that there was a lot of information on.
His father was a really brilliant man and would spend hours with him trying to teach him the rudiments of math and then kind of throw his hands up and express frustration. That was a source of great anxiety for Joel.
Parental disappointment wasn't all Rifkin had to contend with as he moved into his teenage years.
High school was very difficult for him. He was really bullied. They thought he was an oddball. They called him a freak. He had a nickname of the Turtle because he was sort of slow-moving and sort of had a stooped appearance. He sat alone at lunch. They pelted him with eggs. When he joined the cross-country track team, they would hide his running gear. They were really quite cruel.
Joel would stay at school after school was over until the very last minute, and then he would purposely take this circuitous way home, like through the woods, through backyards, limit the risk of running into potential bullies. So even at that young age, as a sort of a survival mechanism, he was forced to be stealth-like and sneaky. I think it's pretty well proven that, incessant bullying over the years, the steady degradation, humiliation, just wreaks havoc on your emotional development. It can make you hateful, resentful, self-loathing.
Around the age of 14 came another experience that Rifkin would later tell Robert Mladinich had been formative.
The earliest sexual fixation he recalls was he saw a 1973 Alfred Hitchcock movie called Frenzy. And in that movie, it is a serial killer, a very urbane, dashing, handsome guy. He's going around London and he's seducing women. And then he strangles them with neckties. And Joel said that all of his domination scenes in that movie really riveted him in a sexually charged way.
The strangulation and the suffering of the victim may have played into kind of misogynistic and paraphilias that he already had. Maybe that film inserted the seed of strangulation as a particular part of his ritual.
He admits that every woman he was ever with, from the first one, when he was 17, 18 years old, to the last one, he fantasized about killing.
There have been studies that show that a lot of times serial killers will harbor these violent sexual fantasies for about 10 to 15 years before actually acting on it. And it seems that the timing sort of lines up for Joel Rifkin.
Unpopular with the girls he met at school, in his late teens, Joel Rifkin sought out his first intimate experience with a sex worker. Very quickly, the young man developed a taste for illicit liaisons.
He was in charge of the whole transactional aspect of soliciting a prostitute, deciding which one you wanted, being able to determine what sex act he wanted.
Having struggled through high school, Joel Rifkin graduated in 1977 and enrolled at Nassau Community College.
After high school, his parents really pushed him to go to college. That was very important to them. He did go for a little while, dropped out, tried different things.
After a couple of semesters, 18-year-old Rifkin left the college to attend an institution over 300 miles away near Rochester.
We were both attending Rockport State College in upstate New York. We were both journalism students.
Robert met Joel Rifkin in October 1979 when the College Photography Club recommended their most promising member.
I had received my first paid assignment to cover a boxing match, and I needed a photographer to accompany me. He seemed kind of rumpled and shaggy-haired, kind of nerdy, a little insecure, but extremely talented, very intelligent. Joel wound up getting lots of really great photos.
For a couple of months, Robert felt like his new friend had a glorious future mapped out. What he did not realize was that 20-year-old Rifkin had another passion that was consuming his attention.
He did have a fixation with prostitutes. He was traveling into Rochester and spending any available money he had on prostitutes.
Rifkin's continued obsession affected not only his college work, but also his personal relationships.
Joel had a girlfriend in college. She adored him. She thought he was fantastic. One of the reasons they broke up was because he was so fixated on the type of sex that he would obtain from prostitutes, where he would be completely in charge. He would say, do this, do that. It would be over in a matter of minutes, and then he would go on his way. And that was what he wanted in his personal relationship. He didn't know how to be more emotionally connected or even physically connected with a woman that he was living with.
In December 1979, Joel Rifkin left the campus to go home for Christmas and never returned.
I never saw Joel again. I always wondered what he was up to and assumed he was doing kind of grand things in the photography world.
Robert's dreams for his friend's career could not have been further from reality. The next time Joel Rifkin made the headlines, it would be for all the wrong reasons. After dropping out of college, Joel Rifkin spent the early 1980s living back with his parents on Long Island, drifting between jobs.
He started a landscaping business, and his mother at that point was excited about it, hoping that this was going to be an avenue for him. But it really didn't take off. He was not very focused on it, didn't do such a job. People just never called him back.
In 1986, Rifkin's father, Bernard, became gravely unwell.
His father is diagnosed with cancer. Rifkin is still desperate to impress him and signs up for a course on biology, but his father is lost to the world.
In 1987, his father was in so much pain, he actually committed suicide. He wrote a letter to Joel, his sister, and his wife saying that he was so sorry, but that he just didn't take the pain anymore.
Devastated by his father's death, 28-year-old Rifkin dropped out of college once again. He returned to being an unreliable would-be landscape gardener with other things on his mind.
As soon as he got money, he would just be fixated on spending it on a prostitute. So he was always in debt, he was always in arrears, he was always borrowing money from his mother, and that was literally all he was concerned with, was getting enough to go into the city from Long Island to do what he would call the stroll patrol.
He spends hours driving round.
And many nights he would just look. It was like a fetish for him, just to look, observe. He liked to stop and talk to them and act like he was interested and then drive away. So that was all part of the power components of his actions.
A couple of months after his father's death, Joel Rifkin fell foul of the law in Nassau County.
In the early summer of 1987, Rifkin falls into a sting conducted by the police, in which he propositions an undercover police officer for sex, and he's fined.
In the 1980s, sex work was on the rise in New York City, in part due to the influx of highly addictive crack cocaine.
In the 80s and the early 90s, there was a crack epidemic in New York City.
That resulted in a pretty significant rise in crime, everything from petty theft by the addicts to feed their habits. And then we got into the crack wars between the dealers seeking to establish territory to supply drugs. So that resulted in quite a few homicides.
There were literally over 2,000 murders a year back in the late 1980s, early 1990s. So there was literally like 7 murders a day. Nearly all of them were drug-related.
In amongst all of the violence were vulnerable women who'd been sucked into the world of substance abuse.
A lot of these women had become addicted to crack, and they just would do anything to get a fix. And that's how they ended up at prostitution.
It was against the backdrop of sex work and daily violence that Lieutenant Arthur Hawker of the New York State Police was called to the discovery of a woman's body in the Cornwall area in October 1991.
Cornwall is very close to the city of Newburgh. Where the victim was found there, it was along a creek called Moodna Creek. It was kind of like a very wooded area. It was almost like a dumping area for, people that just wanted to discard various things. She wasn't buried.
The remains were decomposed and no cause of death was discernible. There was nothing on the body to help identify the young woman.
There's a lot of variables involved in identifying a Jane Doe. You're checking missing persons with that height, weight, race, gender, scars, marks, tattoos, piercings, blood type. We would have gone to the city of Newburgh and compared photos with their detectives. Did they have any missing people?
There were no clues. It wasn't even certain the woman had been the victim of a homicide. As autumn turned to winter, the trail went cold. The following spring, 33-year-old gardener Joel Rifkin was still living in East Meadow, Long Island, with his mother and sister. His life was a secretive one.
Later on, when they interviewed his mother, she said he just came and went. They never checked up on him, didn't know what he was doing.
Rifkin still dabbled in gardening, keeping his equipment in the family garage.
His mother and his sister were forbidden from going into that garage. They never asked why, just like they were forbidden from going into his room at home.
In the late spring of 1992, Lieutenant Hawker was called to the scene of another suspicious death, this time in the Putnam County area of New York State.
On May 25th, 1992, the partially nude female body was located off a secondary road from Interstate 84, and this was close to the state of Connecticut border. And as a result of that, there was concern that she was not a local, and the local sheriff's office asked the state police to investigate the death.
The female body was partially clothed.
I don't recall that there was any effort to conceal, other than to leave her in the weeds along the road. She was not decomposed or anything like that. It appeared to me to be fairly recent.
An autopsy revealed the woman had been strangled to death, but efforts to identify her were initially unsuccessful.
The one distinguishing detail that I recall from the scene was that an earring was missing.
2 months later, a woman saw a picture of the unidentified victim on a flyer at the New York City Police HQ in Manhattan. It was her 33-year-old daughter, Anna Lopez.
She had been the missing person from New York City area.
Her mother described her as a really gregarious, happy, outspoken child.
In her late teens, Anna's life had taken a wrong turn. She'd become addicted to drugs, was homeless, and had resorted to sex work.
Anna's mother remembers that her daughter just struggled to get clean. She had a child that the mother was raising, and she would come and visit once a month to pick up her Social Security check. And I remember the mother saying that she always knew that if Anna didn't arrive on the 3rd of the month, then she was never coming back, because she came for the money, and the money was going to go for drugs.
That month, July 1992, the bodies of 3 more young women were found in New York City's rivers and canals. All were badly decomposed, none were identifiable. Police assumed the murders were drug-related. 4 months later, another woman was found in a New York river.
Jenny Soto's body washed up in November 1992 in a Harlem waterway. She was wearing only a t-shirt when she was found.
Jenny Soto lived in Brooklyn, and she had a big family and was very close to them. She had younger siblings. She used to tell them, don't do drugs, don't even drink, because once you drink, you'll smoke pot, and then you'll just keep continuing. But sadly, she didn't follow her own advice and ended up with a boyfriend that introduced her to drugs, and she became a drug addict. And then ultimately started working as a prostitute to support her habit. But Jenny Soto really had dreams. She wanted to be a dancer. She had a group that she was rehearsing with, and she talked a lot about it. She really wanted to make something of herself.
An autopsy showed that though Jenny had fought her attacker, leaving his skin under her fingernails, her killer had succeeded in strangling her to death before pushing her off a cliff into the Harlem River.
No one knew who killed Jenny Soto, and the family went to the police multiple times and said that they felt that the police didn't care because they just wrote her off. She was a prostitute, and they just didn't take her case seriously.
Despite the discovery of so many women murdered and dumped in bodies of water around the city, no one linked the deaths.
Nobody was saying, we have a serial killer on the loose.
Back then, there was not a lot of computer interaction between the 5 boroughs of New York City. Today, an instant connection would be made. But back then, if something happened in the Bronx, Manhattan, Staten Island, Brooklyn, Queens, there was no linkage between them.
The killings joined the long list of unsolved murders plaguing New York. But just a few months later, a routine traffic stop would lead to a high-speed chase, which would take a macabre turn, blowing the cold cases wide open. At 3:15 a.m. on the 28th of June 1993, 2 troopers from the New York State Police were on patrol on Long Island's Southern State Parkway.
The troopers were on the parkway early morning hours, and they spotted a vehicle with no license plate on the back. They activated their lights and siren. They failed to comply and took them on a pursuit route in Nassau County.
An enormous high-speed chase follows. Other police cars are summoned. It goes on for about 25 minutes. Finally, he loses control on a bend, and the truck goes straight into a streetlight and comes to a grinding halt.
The driver was swiftly removed from the vehicle.
They asked him for his license and registration and told him he had no license plate on the car.
The driver identified himself as 34-year-old Joel David Rifkin. As the troopers prepared to impound the vehicle, they quickly realized the missing license plate was not the only thing wrong.
When the troopers noticed a strong emanating odor of decaying flesh in the back of the vehicle, they went to investigate, and they found the body of a female in partial decomposition wrapped in a blue tarp. He was placed under arrest and brought back to the state headquarters in Farmingdale.
Walter Heesh, then captain of the Bureau of Criminal Investigation with the New York State Police, was called in to lead the investigation into the suspected homicide.
Rifkin said that she was a prostitute he had picked up 4 days before. He had sex with her, and things went bad, and then he killed her.
Police officers were struck by their suspect's unusual demeanor as he gave his version of events.
I remember going to the headquarters and stopped by the squad room where he was secured. He showed a detached concern. He wasn't excited at all about this. It was just a matter-of-fact type of guy right there.
Joel Rifkin told investigators he'd been driving his mother's car when he picked up the young woman on the night of the 24th of June.
She was in Manhattan, on Canal Street downtown, and Joel Rifkin pulled up and she got in his car.
He knew her because he had dated her, in quotes, a number of times.
After strangling the young woman in his car, Rifkin said he'd driven home to his mother's house. He wrapped the body in a tarpaulin and put it in the trunk before driving his oblivious mother to work. Once back home, he moved the woman's body yet again.
He takes the body out of the boot of his mother's car and puts her in the garage in a wheelbarrow. The body is left for 3 days.
Rifkin spent the rest of the weekend fixing his truck and spending time with his mother and sister. By 3 o'clock on Monday morning, he had a plan.
Rifkin takes the body, now decomposing, and puts it in the boot of his truck.
He was on his way to dispose of her in a trash receptacle which was near Iowa State Police headquarters.
Apprehended before he could hide the evidence of his crime, Rifkin was charged with second-degree murder. But the story did not end there.
The interview continued on, and at one point the investigator came to me and advised me, I think he's done this more than one time.
When they began asking him more questions, he just started naming names of all the women he could remember and going through the list.
During 10 hours of questioning, Joel Rifkin stunned detectives when he claimed to have murdered 17 women over the course of 2 or 3 years. If true, it would have made him New York's most prolific serial killer.
I was astonished. When I went in that morning, I thought we had a open and shut homicide case, and then by the afternoon, it was one of the biggest cases we've ever had.
Rifkin explained to detectives how the killing spree had begun back in 1989.
He picks up a girl, she's 25, and she's known as Susie to her fellow sex workers. Rifkin takes her back to his mother's house. His mother's away, out of town.
It got violent. He brutally murdered her and dismembered her and scattered her body in different parts of New Jersey and New York.
He put the head in a paint tin and took it to the wooded section of a golf course. He then dropped the legs in a different place in water.
16 months later, he did it again, killing a young woman called Julie Blackbird. By his third killing in July 1991, Rifkin had developed a murderous routine, which he'd repeat every few weeks or months, driving around the city, selecting his victims.
He'd pick them up, have sex, and then they would get violent, and then he would kill them. And then he'd have to dispose of them.
In the early days, he would dismember them. Later on, he decided that was too messy, he told investigators. So then he would just take the bodies and dump them in various places.
He was very meticulous with the first few, but then eventually he would just put them in barrels in the Hudson River or put them in a dumpster, throw them somewhere on the side of the road. He just got a little reckless towards the end, and I think that's why he got caught.
Years later, Rifkin would explain another element of his routine to old friend Robert Mladinich.
He said that he purposely picked out the women that looked the most emaciated and the most helpless and the most drug-addled. And the reason for that was he wanted minimal resistance.
The victim found in his car the day he was arrested certainly fit this profile. Rifkin didn't know her name, so detectives took steps to find out who the woman was.
I remember somebody at the crime scene taking a picture of the body. She had a tattoo on her arm, and I remember giving that to the press, and the next day, the family reached out and said, yeah, that's our girl, it's Tiffany Bresciani.
She was a young woman with a loving family back in the South.
She had a very promising life. When she left New Orleans for New York, she wanted to be a performer. Unfortunately, she got involved with drugs, wound up on the streets where Joel picked her up.
With one victim identified, investigators needed to find out if the rest of Rifkin's claims were true.
He just asked for a map of New Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut, and New York City. He pinpointed a number of people on those maps where he deposited bodies after he killed them. We had to corroborate his account of the many bodies that he dumped. And we started to do it that day.
Within a couple of days, 2 bodies had been found exactly where Rifkin said they would be. One was confirmed as 28-year-old mother of 2, Leah Evans. 2 months later, the second would be named as 28-year-old Lauren Marquez. Rifkin also directed investigators to another body.
Iris Sanchez, 25 years old. She was killed on Mother's Day weekend in 1992. And her body was placed near JFK Airport under a mattress.
Iris had an 8-year-old daughter. Her family had been searching for her for over a year. Rifkin also claimed the murder of Anna Lopez, whose body had been found in Putnam County a year earlier. Not all of the victims, some of whom were sex workers, had been reported missing.
Something that makes sex workers more vulnerable is that it's a life that is not closely tracked or monitored. If there's addiction in their lives, that makes it even more chaotic. They might not have stable people in their lives who they see every day. So when they go missing, sometimes it's not noticed for quite a long time.
I know that a lot of the victims' families felt that the authorities just weren't that interested. Either their daughter was missing and no one seemed to care, or else they'd find a body and just say it was a prostitute, she was a drug addict, and just not take it so seriously.
With a handful of victims verified, there was a long way to go for detectives to determine if all of Rifkin's claims were true.
We had obtained a search warrant for his house, and the forensic team and investigators went there, and I met them at the house. And it was very orderly until we got into his bedroom. It was in total disarray. He had a dead snake in a glass tank.
It was a gruesome discovery, but by no means the most disturbing thing crime scene officers would find in Rifkin's home that day. By the end of the search, they'd collected dozens of chilling mementos of his shocking crimes. In July 1993, the home where 34-year-old Joel Rifkin lived with his mother on Long Island, New York, was searched inch by inch.
Joel had such a vast collection of souvenirs of his victims, trinkets, prescriptions, credit cards, even a woman's HIV medication.
There was a lady's identification, driver's license, and various pieces of jewelry.
Serial killers are not ashamed of what they've done. They actually want to keep doing it, and they want to keep reliving that moment. So looking at those mementos, if you like, is almost like looking at porn.
Women's clothing, underwear, and makeup were found, as well as a chainsaw, ropes, and a wheelbarrow stained with blood. The trophies found in Rifkin's home were invaluable in identifying more of his victims.
The investigators found a gold earring that Joel Rifkin had taken from Hannah Lopez, and that was another way they identified for sure that he had been the one to kill her.
The earring matched the one Lieutenant Hawker had found on Anna's body in May 1992. The crime scene technicians also found a driving license belonging to a woman called Mary Ellen DeLuca, the victim whose body had been found in Cornwall, New York in October 1991. The cache of evidence in Rifkin's home also pointed to an 18th victim, one he'd not admitted to killing.
Mary Catherine Williams was a former cheerleader from North Carolina. She had been married. Her and her husband were attempting a reconciliation when she was murdered by Rifkin, and lots of her property was discovered in Joel's room. Jewelry, credit cards, things like that.
Other victims linked to Rifkin that month included Mary Ann Holloman, age 39, and 28-year-old Lorraine Orvieto, whose bodies had been found the previous summer. Another was 31-year-old Yun Lee, whose body had been found in 1991 in a steamer trunk in the East River. Rifkin had also confessed to a death that had not even been deemed a murder until that point.
In July of 1991, Rifkin picks up a 31-year-old sex worker called Barbara Jacobs, and again takes her home to Long Island, has sex with her and kills her with exactly the same table leg that he'd killed the previous sex worker.
Her body was put into a plastic bag and thrown into a cardboard box and deposited in the Hudson River in New York.
When Barbara's body is eventually found, her death is attributed to a drug overdose because she clearly was a drug user.
In September 1993, yet another victim was identified.
Violet O'Neill's body parts were found over the course of 3 days in the summer of 1992 in various parts of Manhattan.
By October, Joel Rifkin had been charged with 6 more murders. The following February, he was charged with the murder of Jenny Soto, whose family had anxiously waited for news since she was found dead 16 months earlier.
One day they got a phone call from the investigators, and they said that Joel Rifkin had mentioned the name Soto. They had found an earring of Jenny's in his bedroom. Jenny Soto's mother had told me that she had just prayed to God that she would find the answer and find out what happened to her daughter. And when she got the call about Joel Rifkin, she said it came right between her birthday and Jenny's birthday, and she decided that God had at least answered that prayer for her, so that she at least knew what happened to her daughter.
Despite confirming many of Rifkin's alleged crimes, by the spring of 1994, investigators still had at least 3 sets of remains that had not been identified. In April, Rifkin stood trial for Tiffany Bresciani's murder.
The trial played out in Nassau County, and pretty much it was a cut and dry case. You have the subject, you have the victim, you have the admissions, and you have the medicological examination of the body.
During the prosecution case, he was called a sadistic serial killer who took pleasure in watching people suffer.
Rifkin pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, with his defense team claiming he was a paranoid schizophrenic who could not separate fantasy from reality. The prosecution pointed to the killer's premeditation as evidence of his sound mind.
Because he was premeditated about how he went about these murders, and he did keep trophies.
He was elusive in his methodology of meeting up with these women and then killing them and dropping them all over a wide geographic area.
The jury rejected Rifkin's claim that he was not responsible for his own actions.
On the 9th of May 1994, Rifkin is found guilty of Tiffany's murder and is sentenced to 25 years.
With his client facing future trials for 8 more murders, Rifkin's lawyer told the media the killer suffered from adopted child syndrome, that he believed his biological mother had been a sex worker who, like everyone else in his life, had rejected him. In the end, Rifkin opted not to stand trial, pleading guilty to all of the remaining charges against him.
He was convicted of 9 second-degree murder cases, and he was sentenced to 203 years to life and is now serving that in upstate prison. It is a good relief. The families do have closure with this, and that's one of our main goals, is to provide that to them.
Many of the victims' family members had attended Rifkin's various hearings, even those for whose murders he'd not been charged.
I think for a lot of the victims' families, there is some sense now of justice because they know what happened, and he is going to be in jail for the rest of his life. He wasn't convicted on every single murder, but we know he's never come out.
At one of the sentencing hearings, Rifkin makes, I think, a very interesting statement. He says, "You all think I'm nothing but a monster, and you're right."
When he began visiting Rifkin several years later, Robert Mladinich was struck by the killer's attitude to the devastation he'd caused.
When I went to see Joel the first time in Attica State Prison, we got reacquainted. I was wondering how I was going to lead into the murders because I figured he didn't want me to see him in that light. But effortlessly, within 15 or 20 minutes, we were talking about murder number 1, murder number 2, murder number 3. He showed absolutely no remorse whatsoever. Joel said, "I want to, but I can't, and I don't know why. But I wish I could."
In 1999, Rifkin launched an appeal against his many convictions.
He says, when the Nassau County Police first stopped him in the truck after the chase, they didn't properly read him his rights, and they didn't allow him to ask to see a lawyer.
Rifkin argued that his confession to 17 murders had been obtained unlawfully and should not have been used in evidence.
In 2002, the New York Supreme Court finally dismissed all his appeals.
In 2013, there was an unexpected development in the story of Joel Rifkin and his crimes. His first suspected victim, the woman known only as Susie, was finally identified as 25-year-old Heidi Bulch.
Parts of her body were found in a New Jersey golf course. I think she had one end that they were able to contact and make a positive identification.
There is still one suspected victim of Rifkin, Julie Blackbird, whose remains have never been found, and one Jane Doe who's never been identified. A further victim he claimed to have killed has neither been found nor identified. For the families mourning their loved ones, there are still unanswered questions.
He showed no remorse and really didn't give any kind of a motive. He never really explained. I don't think he understood it himself. It's just this rage, this anger against women who he just felt he had power over.
Joel's killing was definitely a power thing for him. He spent a lifetime being bullied. He spent a lifetime being humiliated and degraded. And finally, he was in charge.
And I think that when he was finally caught, at that point, he actually had something that was special about him. He could say, I was the most prolific serial killer in New York.
Joel Rifkin had the urge to kill for sexual pleasure. Instead of resisting his murderous impulses, he deliberately targeted vulnerable members of society to satiate his violent and selfish needs. In taking the lives of at least 9 women and disposing of their bodies with callous disregard, Joel Rifkin has cemented his place both in the history books and in the roll call of the world's most evil killers.